The story begins on a quiet winter morning when the world outside seemed tired, cold, and overwhelmed. Inside St. Mary's Hospital, the halls were filled with the usual sounds of beeping monitors, hurried footsteps, and whispered conversations. People came here hoping for healing, comfort, or miracles. But life inside a hospital is rarely filled with joy, at least, not the kind you see in movies. Yet sometimes, the most unexpected people bring the biggest light. And on that morning, it came from a group of teenagers no one saw coming. They weren't famous, they weren't wealthy, and they weren't looking for attention. They were just 5 high school friends, Evan, Lily, Marcus, Zoe, and Jaden, who had volunteered for their school's community service program. Most students chose easier options, cleaning a park, doing computer work, or volunteering at events that required minimal effort. But these 5 chose the hospital, thinking it would be quiet, simple, maybe even boring. They had no idea their choice would ignite something much bigger. Their job was straightforward: hand out holiday cards, sing a few songs, talk to patients, and offer company to those spending the holidays in hospital beds instead of at home. They expected polite smiles and maybe a few conversations. What they didn't expect was how deeply every room would affect them. The first patient they met was an elderly woman who hadn't received a visitor in 3 weeks. When Lily handed her a simple handwritten card, the woman began crying softly, clutching it like it was a treasure. Marcus leaned in, asking gently if she was okay. She nodded and whispered, "I just haven't heard my name spoken with kindness in so long." The teenagers exchanged looks, suddenly realizing how powerful small gestures could be. In another room, they met a young boy recovering from surgery. He didn't speak much, but when Jaden pulled out his guitar and played a gentle tune, the boy's face lit up for the first time all day. His mother stepped outside, wiping tears, telling Evan, "He hasn't smiled in a week. Thank you. You don't know how much this means." They continued down the halls, giving away small handmade cards, candy canes, and warm words. What was supposed to be a 2-hour volunteer shift turned into 5 hours. They forgot about their phones, their assignments, and their weekend plans. They were fully present, moved by people they had never met. But everything changed when they reached the pediatric ward. The energy there was heavier, children fighting battles far bigger than themselves. Some were too weak to walk, some connected to machines that beeped rhythmically, some with bald heads from treatment. Zoe's heart ached as she looked around. She whispered to her friends, "We have to do more than cards, this doesn't feel enough." At first, no one knew what more meant. Then, in the corner of the room, they watched a little girl named Hannah struggling to push a toy shopping cart with a broken wheel. Her father explained that they had put some gifts on layaway at Walmart, but they were still struggling to pay it off after months of medical bills. They were hoping to get the toys by Christmas, but nothing was certain. That moment hit the teenagers like a spark. They stepped into the hallway, whispering intensely, emotions flooding their faces. Marcus said, "We have to do something." Jaden added, "Even if it's small, anything helps." Zoe suggested, "What if we paid off their layaway or more people?" Imagine how many families are in the same situation. But they were teenagers. They didn't have money. Their bank accounts had just pocket change from part-time jobs and leftover lunch money. Still, something inside them refused to walk away. That night, they went home and started brainstorming. They made a simple TikTok video, nothing fancy, just them talking about the families they met at the hospital, especially Hannah's family. They explained the financial struggles, the layaway story, and their desire to help. Their message was raw, unfiltered, and honest. "We're just kids," Lily said in the video. "But together, we can do something big. If you have even $1, we'll put it toward paying off layaways for families in the hospital." They posted it at midnight. By morning, their phones were exploding. Thousands of comments, tens of thousands of shares, donations pouring in from strangers around the country. Some gave $5, some gave $100, some gave more, but every person believed in the teenagers' mission. By the end of the day, their campaign had raised enough money to pay off not just one layaway, but hundreds. The teenagers gathered in Evan's garage, staring at the final number on the screen. No one spoke at first. They were overwhelmed. Lily covered her mouth with trembling hands. Zoe began to cry. Jaden kept saying, "This can't be real, this can't be real." But it was. They had started a ripple with nothing but a phone and a genuine heart. The next morning, they walked into Walmart as employees and customers stared, wondering why 5 teenagers were being followed by a wave of positive energy. They approached the layaway counter together, hands shaking, hearts pounding. Evan stepped forward and cleared his throat. We want to pay off every layaway balance, all of them." The employee froze. "All of them, are you serious?" They nodded. Receipts printed nonstop. One after another, red stamped, paid in full. The teenagers couldn't stop smiling. They imagined the moment families would receive the news. They imagined the relief, the joy, the tears. They imagined Hannah's father picking up her toys with pride instead of worry. They stayed anonymous at first, but an employee filmed part of the moment and posted it online. Within hours, the teenagers went viral. News stations wanted interviews. People called them heroes. The hospital invited them back for celebrations. Families cried thanking them. Yet when asked why they did it, their answer was always the same. Because kindness shouldn't require being rich or famous. Anyone can start something. The following week, they returned to the hospital, but this time, instead of cards, they brought gifts. Brand new toys, blankets, books, art sets, stuffed animals, and little bags of hope. When they handed Hannah her toys, she jumped into Lily's arms with pure joy. Her father broke down crying, hugging Marcus tightly. "You didn't just give gifts," he whispered. "You gave us a moment of peace." Their act of kindness didn't stop at Walmart or the hospital. People across the country began paying off layaways. Students in other schools started volunteering. Hospitals reported an increase in gift donations. The teenagers had sparked a nationwide movement simply by caring deeply and acting boldly. Months later, when things calmed down and life returned to its normal rhythm, the teenagers got together at their usual hangout spot, a quiet table in the park. They talked about school, dreams, college plans. But then Evan asked, "Do you ever think about how all of this started? Just one hospital visit, one little card." Zoe nodded thoughtfully. "It's crazy how something small can grow into something huge." Lily added, "Maybe that's the whole point. Kindness doesn't have to be big to matter. It just has to start." The sun was setting behind them, painting the sky orange and gold. Jaden looked around at his friends and said, "We should do this every year. Not for the views, not for going viral, just because it feels right." And everyone agreed. The truth was simple. 5 ordinary teenagers walked into a hospital expecting to spend a couple of hours helping out. Instead, they walked out having changed lives, not with money they didn't have, not with power they didn't hold, but with hearts that refused to ignore someone else's pain. The world often celebrates the loudest voices, the biggest achievements, the most famous faces. But sometimes, the most extraordinary things come from the quietest places, from kids who still believe that kindness is worth fighting for. One act of compassion, one TikTok video, one decision to care. The ripple didn't stop at the hospital. It didn't stop at Walmart. It carried into homes, communities, and hearts across the country. Because when teenagers choose kindness over everything else, the world listens. And when kindness goes viral, everything changes.